Christianity.
All right, now, listen up.
3, 2, 1.
It's showtime.
That's great.
This is ridiculous.
99.3 The Truth.
You can't handle the truth right now.
Ooh.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Let's do it.
Hit it.
It's time for Mac's World. And here we go.
Or text 090993.
It's showtime, everybody! Showtime!
Exclusively on 99.3 The Truth.
Yes, the show formerly known as Mac's World Live. We've converted over to Tom's World Live today, and this is not your formerly top-rated host, J. Michael McCoy. This is Tom Coates, coming to you today with a plethora of discussion topics, joined by Frank the Verse and Bob Mosseret and Jeb out there producing. Very ably, Jeb, you're doing a fine job. And we're getting started, but you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Tom.
And we got a lot of stuff to cover with that long Labor Day weekend and a lot of stuff going on, guys. There's no shortage of material. Now, I would remind the audience, just like the intro said, that if you want to call and be a part of the show, call in 244-0077, and you can actually participate in this show live. Also, if you want to text a question, it's 515-809-0993. That's a Service Legends Truth text line. Now, to kick it off, guys, for those of you that were not listening last week, we had a very educated, sharp young man, Joel Kirstenitis. And I may have butchered that last name a little bit, but I'm still having trouble with that. Maybe this chair creates a problem with people's names. But Joel, in fact, he got an article in this last Sunday edition's Des Moines Register. Sharp young man. I think I would agree with him on nearly 90% of the stuff that he said. His article this last Sunday, guys, was about government regulation, bureaucracy choking out businesses. Boy, I've got no problem with that. Now, Joel came on the show as a never-Trumper, though. Joel put himself out as a Christian man of high principles, intellectual, and just could not get behind the candidacy of Trump. Now, of course, didn't try to defend Hillary in any way, shape, or form, but had some points, and I wanted to go back and follow up. We could take the point of his saying that government regulation, bureaucracy, and we've seen one area of growth in this economy. It's in areas of government regulation, especially under Obama. The swelling of bureaucracy, oversight of agencies like the EPA that are literally choking out businesses and farming and everything else to the detriment. And that was what his article was about. There's one of the two top candidates that's talked about that in his vein, and that's, guess who? Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made the point numerous times that we need to reduce the government red tape, the government bureaucracy, the regulatory bodies that are choking out this economy. There's a point of agreement. He also said, Frank, you were gone, but you were here over the phone. You probably listened to most of it.
Yeah, I heard most of his.
He accused Donald Trump at one point of flip-flopping on immigration. Now, admittedly, it was the day before his trip down to Mexico and his speech that night where he gave a number of points over a very detailed fashion about what he wanted to do about immigration. I said no, he's not flipping on immigration, and turned out I was right. He did not flip-flop on immigration. We talked about the Supreme Court. He said at that point, well, how do you know who he's going to choose? I mean, I get this from these never-Trumpers. How do you know he's going to say, he's going to do what he says he's going to do? He's got 11 good judges on there. He says, well, he might not appoint one. I said, he might not. But I said the full expectation is he's going to take somebody of that ilk. There's absolutely no chance that Hillary Clinton is going to select a decent, anything other than a far-left loon that cares nothing about the Constitution. And he finally grudgingly admitted that was perhaps a point.
Well, a lot of these never Trumpers, Tom, are so dug into their position that they've went so far out on the limb they can't gracefully walk it back and still save face. So I think that's a lot of what you're seeing. I mean, there's very positive things coming out of the Trump camp. He's reorganized, he's revamped, he's brought new people on, he's got rid of some old people. His message is starting to gain traction, and he's saying all the things that should be said by a Republican candidate, but they still can't come around because they've dug in on this never Trump business.
Well, and Joel is, again, I don't want to have the listeners misinterpret this, but I want to make the last point. It was one you and I were talking about off the air. He said it as one of his rationales for not supporting Trump is he's buried in the polls and can't win. And I quickly interrupted him, and I said, Joel, the L.A. Times poll, which is pretty reliable, 3,000 households across the country, does a rolling poll of 400 of those households every day, is starting to move. And he claimed it was an outlier. I don't know if you heard that, but he said, it's an outlier. And I said, no, it is not an outlier. And the other polls are starting to move. Well, now I've gotten further validation on my point there. And again, I guess I am saying yanya. I was right on this too, because now a poll called the CNN poll, which is far removed from a Donald Trump poll, has come out today and shows that Donald Trump is up 2. The LA Times that I referenced in the last week has shown Donald Trump up anywhere from 1 to 4 points. The polling that's gone on, and I think you properly said it earlier, Frank, done to dispirit Trump support, trying to tamp it down. I would say a couple of things about that. One of the things that, very obvious, Reuters a few months ago was doing polling that showed Trump leading Clinton. They announced their polling methodology was flawed. They revamped it in a very blatant attempt to show Hillary on top, and it happened. When they revamped it, lo and behold, instead of Trump leading, it showed Hillary leading. Then he went through a period after the Democrat convention where he floundered around, didn't have a very good few weeks, and it showed him trailing by 12. One guy, Pat Caddell, a former Democrat pollster, maybe even done some work currently, said it was the most outrageous thing he'd ever seen on Reuters, and said that if they were in a different profession, they'd be put in jail for such shenanigans. So the polling is done to dispirit us, but I will just have to point back to the polling in 1980. And Frank, Bob, you guys were around. Jeb, you
wasn't born yet, probably.
I don't think you probably was taking.
Yeah, I wasn't around then.
No,
93 is when I was born.
All right, okay.
So a few years off.
1980. Guess who was leading?
Jimmy Carter, right?
That's right. And it wasn't until they got into the debates that Reagan stepped up, showed that he was and could look very presidential, and showed Jimmy Carter to be the bumbling idiot that he was, and went on to win a decisive victory. And I think the parallel is that I think some of the conservatives in the audience are going to cringe, but you have to remember back in the 70s. 76, Reagan challenged a sitting Gerald Ford for the presidency in the primary. Came up just a little bit short. The establishment did not like Ronald Reagan. They did all they could to submarine, to take him out. They actually liked the senior Bush better when he was running the primary in the 1980 election. And when he finally bested everybody, he was held in great disdain by the establishment of the Republicans. And that's not remembered now because he is remembered so fondly by Republicans, but he was not in a terribly different position than what Donald Trump is. And we're going to have a caller call in here in a little bit, I believe, a friend of ours and been on the show different times, Steve Scheffler. Phyllis Schlafly's last piece she wrote, she passed away yesterday at 92, compared Ronald Reagan along with Donald Trump. And she compared his 1985 trip over to Europe and compared it with what Trump did going down to Mexico and meeting with the president. Yes, Frank?
I just wanted to mention to you before we get too far off the topic, Joel Curtinitis, Chris Roloff posted the what he had to say in the Tribune or the Register on Facebook, and I got I got a text or a message that was put onto it, whatever, and it said, "This was a great program. Tom and Frank did an awesome job of bringing fact and challenging. I loved it."
Now, that was not from a relative,
That
was it,
was
Frank?
not from a relative.
In fact, my wife listened to a little bit of it, and she had less than some complimentary things to say about it.
So just go home and tell her you done an awesome job, Tom.
All right, good. I'm glad we got at least one fan out there, Frank, and it's not hopefully related to us.
No.
Let's move on if we can. We've got about a minute before our first break. Real quick, I want to touch on something Barack Obama did over the weekend, and that was to defend Colin Kaepernick, and again, I'm butchering his last name, and I really don't care, who apparently must be, the rumor is he's now dating a Muslim woman and has shifted him around on some of his thoughts, but he's not an intellectual powerhouse, and the Barack Obama did come out to defend his right to speak and raises the specter of some very important issues that we need to have conversations about. And I'm paraphrasing, I could read it exactly, but I want to talk about that a little bit when we come back. We've got just a few seconds to go, but Colin Kaepernick and that whole thing with the police and how Obama's treating it is just symptomatic.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens, rock on! This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Yes. Formerly Max World Live for the day. It's been transformed over Tom's World Live. And off the air, Bob was pointing out the late news item. For those of you that are fans of Greta Van Susteren on Fox, it looks like she's going to be departing. I was telling them that back in 2008 on New Year's Day, I looked out of my front stoop, and who stood out there in the cold but Greta herself. I shuttled her into the house and met with her a few other times after that. Good little gal, conservative. Britt Hume's going to be taking her spot over there on Fox News, in case anybody's interested, coming out of retirement to take that time slot over. Anyway, back to the subject we were discussing before we got off the first track here. That was Colin Kaepernick. Again, apologized to no one for mispronouncing his last name. But the football player that formerly was a starter for the San Francisco 49ers, now relegated to second string, has decided a few weeks ago that he was going to show his outrage for the status of the police in this country. We have a picture of the... that was an old picture. Now he's got an afro that's out there at about foot long. But there's a picture on the screen for anybody looking at it on the internet. He was sitting, and the day that they honored the military there in San Francisco, he actually deigned to take a knee, but would not stand for the national anthem in protest to the way this country, and particularly our police, treated the minorities in this country. Yes, Frank.
Well, I would suggest to you, Tom, as you said, I think he's been cut down to second-string quarterback.
Yeah, $12 million a year second stringer. Yeah.
There's some people suggesting he may not even make the cut for the squad this year, and I think this would be his built-in excuse, plausible excuse that because he spoke up, he got canned, so he'll probably try to make some sort of civil lawsuit or something out of this that he was canned because of the NFL in this country is racist.
No question about it. And he wore socks with pigs depicted as policemen the other day. He's shown his disdain. As I understand it, many of the police that in their off-duty put themselves out to be security there at San Francisco Stadium are ready to now walk and not provide the security to them. Don't blame them a bit. We know that San Francisco is not exactly a friendly environment for for conservatives, but we also do not believe that Obama says that he has a right to free speech. Nobody's arguing that.
Sure.
But keep this in mind, guys. He's making $12 million a year. He is working as an employee for the San Francisco... 19 million per year. 19 million. Okay, I underestimated.
It was a 7-year deal when he signed it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. He is not a private citizen when he walks onto there in a uniform. He is an employee of the San Francisco 49ers, who are part of the NFL. And the NFL denied the Dallas Cowboys the ability to put on their jerseys something that would honor the Dallas police. They wouldn't go for that, but they have no problem with the players running out there onto the field saying, hands up, don't shoot. They have not shown any willingness to discipline Colin Kaepernick, despite his insult to the police and to the military that he was, performing or not performing in front of. The idea that he can do as he wants to as an employee extends only as far as the reach of his employer. And if they chose, and I hope that they will, but again, we are talking about the NFL, which has become very liberally feminized over the years, and they are much more likely to tolerate this than somebody that might be seated in a conservative position on some mission there. Yes, Frank?
Don't you think, Tom, as I do, that Colin could probably find some way to protest his grievances against the country, against the team, against whatever, and still stand up and honor the flag and the soldiers who died to provide that freedom for him?
Well, again, I think this is perhaps influenced by his girlfriend, but I think he's largely influenced by the messages given, not message, but messages given by our glorious leader, Barack Hussein Obama, who from early on, when they had a dispute with the gates He didn't know how the police had performed, but he knew they'd acted stupidly. If he had had a son, he'd have looked like Trayvon Martin down in Florida. Made equally inflammatory comments involving the issue down in Ferguson. Sends the FBI down. Does everything he can to throw gasoline onto the racial fires. And the vast majority of people in this country now believe, as I do, that our racial tensions in this country are at a high at least since the 60s. When the irony is, guys, that we elected Barack Hussein Obama. I've seen him in his Muslim getup back as he was an earlier pup, as he was attending some of the teachings down there for the Quran. They view him as a mechanism when they first voted for him back a few years ago, that he would meld the cultures and the races together, and we would just be one country. The irony is, it's happened just the opposite.
Well, Tom, if the black vote or the black population is about 13% of the country, and we're a country of 350 million people, that roughly comes out to be 45 million black voters. And what did he receive? He received in the neighborhood of 100 million votes. So that means he had to get 100. He had to get even if every black person alive voted for him, that means he had to get 50 or 60 million votes from some other place besides the black community. So that means a whole lot of white people voted for. Mm-hmm. So how do you just all of a sudden prescribe that we're a racist country when a lot of people voted to put him in office?
It obviously is part of his agenda to create divisions in this country and take advantage of those things. Now, some people that are more knowledgeable than I, that I respect, though, think that not only he but Hillary are followers of Alinsky, and that this is one of Alinsky's tenets. I've never read much into Alinsky. I've just read some summaries, but apparently this is one of his tenets, to create that kind of division. And then, as his former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, once famously said, never let a crisis go to waste.
So what Charles Manson and Helter Skelter didn't accomplish, Barack Obama's out to finish, right? Would you suggest that it looks like he's trying to stir the blacks up enough to burn the country down?
You would have to think that he's taken every opportunity he can to do just that. The idea that Barack Obama is somehow interested in anything other than that would have to argue that his actions are far different than his words, and that's oftentimes the case. He gives words that sound good to the unwary, but the idea that he has anything other than that, again, just once again, he's putting his muscle behind Colin Kaepernick, which most of the country is offended at when he won't stand for the national anthem. But anyway, that's just kind of the latest in that thing. I talked to a friend of mine the other day. We were talking about walls and the idea. Of course, this goes to Trump's cornerstone, what we were talking about earlier, the immigration. He's still, even in the face of a Mexican president and a very hostile media, is saying that we need walls. And a friend of mine said, well, you know what Ronald Reagan said about walls? And I said, no. I said, other than he had been deceived by the Democrats when he granted amnesty to 3 million of them and they didn't do anything to secure the border, he said, no, he said, tear down this wall. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, are you going to compare a wall constructed by the communists to keep people in, to a wall to solidify national borders, to keep undesirables out, as the same thing? It's just the antithesis. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, you hit something key, Tom. The Great Wall of China, the Berlin Wall, all these walls weren't built to keep people out. Right. It's built to keep people in. So it would seem like, to me, it would be in Mexico's benefit, a country of 90 million people who is losing people at the rate that they're losing. It would look like to me they'd be in the interest of building a wall to keep their populace in. That's what tells me that this is an orchestrated effort to flood our country with illegals. But didn't you think Trump looked mighty presidential? Speaking down in Mexico City with the Mexican president, he looked like he just looked like he was right on his game.
Oh, well, there's no question. I think that's a good part of the reason why he's coming up in the polling. Hillary is hiding out. We haven't talked about her much yet, but the idea that the illegal situation is really ironic, guys, when you understand that Mexico on its southern border has walls, has barriers, has significant restrictions to anybody wanting to cross across their southern border. And it is just the height of hypocrisy to look at our situation and say, well, we don't have the right to tell people they can't come into this country as they want to. And yet those people coming from Mexico, the irony is that the people from Central America can't get into Mexico without real penalty, and they are punished if they do.
And I've also heard there's tougher restrictions on voting in Mexico than there is here in the United States. So that's quite ironic also.
Well, it is the irony, too, because we're talking about the minority vote in the last election. They came out and voted 93% for Barack Obama. I don't think anybody expects, I certainly don't, for anything like the turnout. It wasn't just the 93%, but a high percentage turnout that went ahead and pushed Barack Obama past Mitt Romney. That Hurricane Crowley and Hurricane Katrina also, and Mitt's own reluctance to want to engage in the last two debates sunk his boat. But and what a different country we'd have today if Mitt Romney were the president. But I would say that the idea that we should not do what Trump is saying point by point and protect our borders. One of the things that we have seen on display, guys, on this subject, and we had Dan Charleston in last week as our guest for the running for the Polk County Sheriff's position. And I don't have to tell you that we had two examples over the last 2 days. We had a grandmother that was shot, minding her own business, having her granddaughter go into the store by a gangbanger, and then we had 4 people shot just yesterday, I believe, at the Seven Flags. It's not exactly what we would consider a high crime area out in Clive, but 2 people killed, 2 people wounded. Now, I don't know the details on that, but it seems like it's almost an every other day occurrence. We're getting some kind of shooting here in the city. Much of that. Did you see the bus that they made the other day, guys, where we were, ladies and gentlemen, where we were having 20 different residences busted at the same time, and they arrested, I think, 18 different varmints.
Didn't see that.
The drug bust, you didn't see it?
No, but I did see that black lady that had gotten shot had been on the news talking about how dangerous the neighborhoods were and how you was having to miss the stray bullets, and apparently she may have been targeted. I don't know, but supposedly it was a random stray bullet that killed her.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think she was the target. From what I understand, there were some others that were actually being targeted. But this is what you get when you get into these gang situations. And Dan drew up last week on the show that there may be 100 different gangs in this country. We've got 50 of them in Des Moines now. We are also a sanctuary city. I noticed that the names of all 18 that have been arrested in that big sting that they did to the 20 residences were all Hispanic names. And I will make you a side wager that a great many of those side names are people that should not have been in this country in the first place. The numbers of crimes that are being committed in this country, Fox, maybe the only conservative now left on Fox is Sean Hannity. He had quoted some numbers about the crime statistics being tied back to this whole issue. Yes,
well, this
Frank.
is part of Trump's message, law and order.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. Well, we're going to go to our next break, and hopefully we'll hear from our friend Steve Scheffler. I've asked him to call in and say a few words about Phyllis Schlafly. We'll look forward to hopefully seeing Steve call in here in a few minutes. But Tom Coates sitting in for J. Michael McCoy, Max World Live.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed right or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Yes, Tom Coates coming back to you from Max World Live. We've transformed over to Tom's World Live today, and I've asked a friend of the show to call in, and he's been kind enough to do that. Steve Scheffler, who's the chairman of the Iowa Republican Party. He is also a longtime friend and associate of now the late Phyllis Schlafly, who died yesterday at the age of 92. And Steve, are you with us on the line?
I sure am, Tom.
Good. I appreciate you calling in as I requested. Once I got the message on my my phone yesterday that she had passed away, the next thing I did was to text you and ask you if you were available to call in. You've been good enough to do that. So give us a little background first on your relationship with the late Phyllis Schlafly.
Well, I've known Phyllis, I guess, for about at least 25 years or more. I first met her when I used to go to the annual, in those days it was called Christian Coalition, conferences, and she always was a speaker. And then in 1992, she came to Iowa, and she wanted to set up shop here or begin to put the effort together to defeat the infamous Equal Rights Amendment. And, I had followed her for several years at that point, but I told her, I said, Phyllis, I love you. You're a great gal. You've done what few other people have done with our movement, but the polls show that 82% of the people are going to vote for the ERA, and I think you're wasting your time and your money by setting roots down here in Iowa. And she kind of gave me that look like, oh, ye of little faith. And so with her persistence, and this wasn't the first time. She also set up shop here in 1980 and defeated the ERA in that particular year, too. And, of course, on the national scene, she was the sole reason why the ERA was defeated because there were several states, I think like 35 states had ratified it, and only took, I think, 3 more. And she went to work and make sure it didn't go anywhere. And then also she was the sole purpose, or the sole reason why the first strong pro-life language got in the Republican National Platform back in 1976 in Kansas City, and that particular language has stayed in the platform ever since. That strong pro-life language supporting the life of the baby from conception till natural death. So, I actually knew her when I was a senior, I guess maybe a sophomore, junior in high school. During the Goldwater campaign, she wrote that first book that got a lot of national attention called A Choice Not a Nickel. And so my view is, had it not been for her paving the way, a lot of conservative victories today would not have been possible. She fought the battle when nobody was by her side, and so our movement owes her a lot. In fact, I don't think there's anybody in America who has done more for the conservative movement than Phyllis Schlafly. So, and then she came to Iowa and spoke at a couple of our Faith and Freedom Coalition fall events, and actually did a series of 4 different house parties, 2 in western Iowa and 2 in eastern Iowa at different points in time. So she and I became very, very close friends. And then, of course, when I ran for National Committee man all 3 different times, she was very kind enough to give me a public endorsement. So I just have a lot of respect for her, and our movement will certainly miss her because she gave so much to this country and to the conservative movement.
She kept chugging along right up until the end. Steve, did I tell you that a few years ago when I was flying out of Washington, D.C., I and my wife were in the airport, and I had spotted her. Apparently she was on the same flight as we were, and she was there with a young woman who I later learned was her daughter. And as the young woman walked by, I said, "Is that Phyllis Schlafly over there?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "You think it'd be all right if I went over and said hi to her?" And she said, "Well, it depends on what you're going to say." But then, we kind of laughed, and I assured her that I was a friendly soul. There were less than friendlies out there in D.C., but went over and had a nice chat with her and really enjoyed. She was very warm and open at that point and welcoming to I and my wife, even though I'm sure she was probably a little bit reluctant to want to engage in the middle of an airport.
Yeah, she's just a phenomenal lady. She, gave so much. In fact, she was at the Republican National Convention, the delegate from Missouri at this last convention just about a month and a half ago. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she had been a delegate for every Republican National Convention from 1952, when Dwight Eisenhower was first nominated, through the president in 2016. So she'd been a delegate for, what would that be, 64 years? So,
wow.
She's, and then, of course, she just wrote another book not too long ago, maybe about a year ago, that was kind of a bounce off of that first book, A Choice Not an Echo, kind of like a number 2 book. And then I think there's a third book coming out that was penned by her and her executive director, can't think of his name now, from Missouri. So,
Steve, did you read her last column? It was put out there just not long ago.
I did. I just got that newsletter. Maybe you're talking about the one where she's talking about Trump and everything?
Yeah, it's comparing Trump to Ronald Reagan, Reagan's 1985 trip and speech out there in Germany, and his trip down to Mexico. What's your comment? What's your thought on her support for Donald Trump and her comparison of him to Reagan?
Well, I mean, if anybody is going to be kind of looking at a candidate and basically dissecting every single inch of their philosophy, I mean, it's Phyllis Schlafly. Let's face it, Phyllis Schlafly, and I mean this in a respectful and in a positive way. She didn't give anybody a free pass. If she didn't think you were up to promoting conservative issues, and I think one of the reasons why she was so attracted to Donald Trump was, number one, his strong support of securing the borders. That was number one. Mm-hmm. And number 2 was her strong support of him because she felt that, unlike a lot of prior Republican presidents and nominees and or Republicans, that he was not a globalist. And that she, like him, was very suspicious of international treaties and the so-called free markets, concerned about whether our country got a fair shake. So I think especially on free trade / globalist and the borders, those are at least a couple of the things that attracted Phyllis Schlafly to Donald Trump. And so when she kind of gives that seal of approval, to me that's an indication that conservatives should feel comfortable in voting for Donald Trump. Of course, one of her favorite sayings was, "If you're expecting perfection in a candidate, you won't find Jesus Christ's name on the ballot." And so I'm sure she knew that Donald Trump had his imperfections like every other candidate, but certainly her seal of approval should give conservatives, some feelings that they can support Trump without any reservations, especially in light of the fact that we're running against a woman who is the most, in my book, evil and flawed candidate in the history of the country. And of course, more and more revelations come out every day that makes that case very well.
Hey, Steve, this is Frank. Don't you think that Phyllis would say or assert that Trump is striking the right balance between free and fair trade? I don't think Trump is anti-trade.
Oh, no.
He's just anti-getting our lunch handed to us or getting our lunch ate by these people we get involved in these trade deals with.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I wasn't trying to indicate that she was against all trade and everything, but making sure that our country got a fair shake,
Yeah.
Steve, I don't know if you heard, but we had Joel Kirstenitis on last week, Never Trumper. Later on this station, you hear the voice of Steve Deace, another so-called principled intellectual Never Trumper. How do you think Phyllis would have handled individuals like that?
Well, she would have been graceful, but she would have been strong, and I would have loved to seen her debate Joel Kirstenitis and or Steve Deace, and I think she would have won hands down. The bottom line is these people, they may not say it, but they're looking for their self-appointed standard of perfection. And Tamara Scott and I were actually on the way home from an event here about 2 weeks ago, and heard Steve say, that Phyllis Schlafly, along with somebody else, I forgot who it was, owed every conservative Christian Republican in the country an apology for giving us Donald Trump. And of course, as you know, Tom, I think it's a very insulting, nasty remark, and because Phyllis has given so much, and there's nobody that I respect more, and people need to get on board because...
Appreciate that, Steve. We're running out of time, but I appreciate you calling in. I really do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye. Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common, everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Max World Live. Tom Coates coming into you. You're in your headset, in your airwaves, and transformed it over to Tom's World Live for the day. Max taking a day off, so we, the
hostile takeover.
Cat's away, the mice will play. Isn't that right, Frank?
Yeah, it's a hostile takeover, Tom. I think is what it is.
Anyway, we want to thank our friend Steve Scheffler, committee man for the Iowa Republican Party, for calling in this last hour and giving us some of his thoughts about the late Phyllis Schlafly. He was quite close, and I wanted to get some of his, because we do owe her a lot. I mean, as he said, she single-handedly defeated the ERA and some other insidious pieces of legislation, and was always a principal voice, and would come out and now say that there isn't any choice. You know, you have to support Donald Trump if you believe in the kind of values and the Constitution and the country that was originally founded. There just isn't any choice, and I think he referred to Hillary as perhaps the most corrupt politician to ever run for the presidency. Now, that might be a heavy load. I'm sure there's people that could at least challenge her on that. But
I don't know. I don't even know if Obama is as corrupt in fundraising as her.
No, and then speaking of Obama, let's point out that he has not had the best week as he continues down this, what I guess could be termed his humiliation tour. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but he was snubbed by the Chinese starting up the G20. I mean, these people, they would not do that accidentally. But they not only didn't give him the red carpet, they didn't even give him the stairs to come down on. And he ended up having to come down out of the service stairway to get on the ground. It was just a few days prior to that Rice, his emissary to the United Nations, the one that went around and kept saying that Benghazi was the fault of a video, and telling that lie to the point that anyway, she was rewarded by giving the UN stab. And did you see that she was verbally assaulted by a Chinese official days before that on the tarmac?
No.
Yes. And then we can go on to perhaps one of... You going to say something,
Well,
Frank?
just quickly, with the Olympics wrapping up, it kind of slipped my mind that Obama got snubbed when he went and tried to promote Chicago for the Olympics in his first term, and they wouldn't even been over there in Brazil or whatever. I guess you could actually walk across the water. There's so much pollution in the water over there, and they was out there cleaning that thing up weeks and weeks before the Olympics. But we're not. Nobody's afraid of us. Nobody respects us.
That's exactly right, and they do, I think, view him as a paper tiger, a joke. Somebody not to be respected. I think Putin was, I saw a picture of the two of them together. I guess they had a little bit of a stare down, but Putin normally anymore just kind of pats Obama on the head and sends him on his way and does what he wants to do without any fear of any repercussions. And the Philippine president, I think, maybe had the quote of the day. Did you guys see that?
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah. The Philippines, for those of you that do not know, are going through a major purge of drug dealers and drug users over there in the Philippines. I mean, if you're a drug dealer over in Philippines, you know, you're running on pretty thin ice right now, because they are doing away with them, and if they resist, they're killing them. The people are lining up wholesale to get into the detox programs because they don't want to be shoved into the prisons or something worse. And so the Philippines have said enough is enough. While we seem to be having our own epidemics, not only with the normal street drugs, but now with heroin and the painkillers and such, the others are being brought in wholesale fashion, again, across our porous borders. But this Philippine president is involved in a major drug push to get rid of the drug dealers and the drug trafficking. And Obama, of course, a tendency to want to stand up on his pulpit and and demagogue to people, started to do that. And the Philippine president said, don't demagogue us. And he called Obama a son of a whore, which I'm not cleaning up. That's a straight quote. For those of you that understand where Obama came from, and I've seen some of the pictures of his teenage mother taken by Frank Marshall Davis without the encumberment of any clothing, could understand why a Philippine president might refer to Obama as the son of that type of a woman. Yes, sir.
So this Filipino president's not coddling drug addicts like this country does. And what was the story here within the last week that Obama had commuted the sentences of a bunch of inmates?
Exactly right. He has been releasing, just as he wants to release all of the terrorist leaders out of Guantanamo, he's releasing the drug dealers back onto the street, claiming that they are nonviolent offenders and don't represent any threat to our society. Well, I would point out, gentlemen, that again, back in the early part of this hour, we talked about the shootings going on in our streets and the 50 drug gangs that are in our community at this point in the city of Des Moines. I hope Dan Charles can get elected to change some of that, because we're a sanctuary city, and all 18 of those people arrested in that sting operation last week were Latinos. Between some of the black gangs and the Latino gangs, we have a drug epidemic in this country, and instead of doing anything constructive about it, Obama let some of the top drug dealers back out onto the streets, in all likelihood to reoffend. What kind of expense did we go to put them in there in the first place? Now he lets them out early only to rerun the operations. So anyway, the Philippine president has the quote of the day, defining Obama as the son of a whore, and we understand where he's coming from. So, Frank, you have anything else to wrap up that discussion?
Just the fact that Obama is doing such a lousy job that even our even fellow governments, heads of fellow governments, are laughing at him.
Yeah, no, he's making us a laughing stock, and that's why we do need new leadership. And Hillary Clinton is not new leadership. It would just be a further and perhaps even more corrupt extension of that. Now, if you're expecting to get a moderator that is objective today, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to get back with somebody like J. Michael McCoy, who's not objective, but he's closer than I am on some of these subjects. So now in the next hour, we plan to have a friend of ours, Will Rogers. Will is the former head of the Polk County Republicans, and we'll look forward to getting his commentary in here. Will should be our guest in the next hour. Frank, anything from you?
Well, will we be able to touch on, there's some stories out about Hillary's health. Will we be able to promote those for next hour?
I suspect we will. Now, if you want to call and be part of the show, 244-0077, or our text number, the Service Legends Truth text line, 809-0993 is that number. So please make yourself a part of the show if you'd like, or if you want to just sit back and listen to Frank and I continue to pontificate. We'll have Will Rogers thrown into the mix in this next hour. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Coates coming to you from Max World Live.